Hello, this is Tony with TerraSky, and today we're going to cover how to use the panel grid inside of SkyVisualEditor. To find this, you go to the component palette on the left-hand side of the Design Studio. Select the panel grid and drag it onto the canvas. Notice how there are a couple of sections that get grayed out. The panel grid can be placed onto the canvas directly, inside of a page block, or inside of a tab. Once you place the panel grid onto the canvas, you'll be prompted with the number of rows and columns that you would like the default panel grid to have. Once that's selected and the panel grid is placed onto the canvas, you'll be able to look at something that a user would typically find when looking at an Excel document. To select the entire panel grid, you double-click any of the cells. You can also select any of the individual cells to place contents inside. To resize the columns, you hover over the gray area for that particular row or column and can resize as needed. When you're actually ready to place contents into the panel grid, the labels will disappear. To illustrate this, notice I'm going to take the account number from the page block section above and place it into the second cell of the first row. The label has been removed and we are left with just the input field for this particular field of the object. Select the object panel on the left-hand side. There are multiple input types. Select label. Down on the bottom left, you will now see all of the labels that are associated with the fields. I'm going to find the account number and drag this onto the first row cell. Now we notice that we're able to have a mixture of the labels and the individual fields inside of the panel grid. This gives for a greater flexibility in terms of the naming convention and the spacing that you provide in these particular panel grids. Now I'm going to select an entire row. To do this, you hover over the gray area, in my case the number 3, and I double click this and it will select the entire row. There's a pop-up window that shows up every time you click on a row or an individual cell in the panel grid. When you have an entire row or a column selected, you'll be given extra options for adding or removing rows and columns that you do not normally have when working with individual cells. To illustrate this, I have the column 3 selected and I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And I'll remove the last one as well. Now we're down to just 2 columns and 3 rows. There are a couple of other components that you can place inside of the panel grids. You can place the data tables directly inside. So I'll place that into the 3rd row here. You can select the object you'd like to work with and place that right inside, and you would work with the data table as normal. The other thing that you can work with inside of here besides just the fields is the page block. So inside of the first cell on the 2nd row, I have now placed an entire page block. You then can place page block sections with all of its contents directly inside of that. To illustrate, I'll take the account information page block section and place it inside of this component. This should give you some greater flexibility and ideas on how you can and cannot work with individual panel grids to provide greater flexibility for your users. I'm going to show you one example of a panel grid that I have set up to mimic a sales process from the book Customer-Centric Selling. So here's a series of checkboxes that have been placed onto this particular panel grid to allow a sales team the ability to go through and check off as they do or do not perform certain actions to meet certain stages of the pipeline process. Thanks for watching.